This one is going to be complicated, folks. We're going to jump right in. So I saw this morning on Twitter a bunch of tweets of people bashing AOC. And I'm thinking, AOC is getting bashed again? Oh, boy. This is a complicated subject here. So there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of context that we need to discuss before we can properly digest this son of a bitchin' meal. So let's start with this headline. This is, I would categorize this under the October surprise, grouping of, headlines and news stories that we're going to be seeing here. Absolutely one of them. Liberal Democrats call on Biden to shift Ukraine strategy. This headline is misleading. It's just misleading. It just is, right? Now, I'm going to tell you why in a moment here. But we're going to go deeper on this. Now, this is, again, a nuanced situation. You just can't take one side, oh, they're evil, or they're the smartest motherfuckers in the world. You can't. That's not a situation here. More than 24 liberal House members are, liberal, this is, I don't know, on the language thing. Like, these are not liberals, right? Liberal is Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, right? These are progressive, right? These are left-leaning, right? Left-wing is a better word. Liberal is the worst way to describe the progressive caucus in the U.S. House. I'm just saying. Are calling on Joe Biden to shift course in his Ukraine strategy and pursue direct diplomacy with Russia to bring the months-long conflict to an end. In a letter sent to Biden on Monday. Now, again, the letter sent to Biden on Monday is a key detail here. The group of 30 Democrats praised Biden's efforts to date at supporting Ukraine while avoiding direct U.S. involvement on the ground. But they suggest a more forceful attempt at bringing the war to an end through diplomacy is necessary to prevent a long and slugging conflict. Quote, given the destruction created by the war for Ukraine and the world, as well as the risk of catastrophic escalation, we also believe it is in the interests of Ukraine, the United States, and the world to avoid a prolonged conflict. The group, led by Congressional Progressive Caucus Chairwoman Pramila Jayapal, write in a letter. For this reason, we urge you to pair the military and economic support the United States has provided to Ukraine with a proactive diplomatic push, redoubling efforts to seek a realistic framework for a ceasefire. Now, again, hold the phone before you make any sort of judgment. I know a lot of people in my audience are going to make a snap judgment in some way or the other. Now, I hope the majority of my audience is intelligent enough to hold the fucking phone for a second here. In fact, I'm going to give you a visual representation here. Hold the fucking phone, okay? You see this? This is a cell phone, right? It tells the time. That's all I use it for. You can't actually see the time. You just saw the reflection. That's my dog. And I'm holding the phone, so just... The letter comes at a critical moment in the war as Russia is increasingly targeting civilian infrastructure with particular focus on cutting power supplies to Ukrainian citizens ahead of winter. In Congress, questions have grown at the willingness of lawmakers to sustain the massive financial and military support that has gone to Ukraine. Some Republicans have threatened to cut aid to the country if they take control of Congress in November. Another thing, if Republicans take control of Congress in November, Ukraine is gone. Now, again, hey, maybe it's possible that that's not the case, right? I could be wrong, but I'm going to tell you this. If Republicans take control of Congress and somehow stop all funding for Ukrainian defense, Ukraine is gone. It's over. It's done. Now, is Europe going to still supply them with a lot of stuff? Absolutely. Right? Is it going to be sustained for a longer period of time than immediate? Absolutely. But overall, I think the trajectory of the war with Russia, more particularly, I should say, Russia's illegal imperialistic invasion of another country, Ukraine, I think that the tides will turn. I think if the U.S. funding for Ukraine stops, I think morale will drop for the Ukrainians, and I think morale will increase for the Russians. I think that the Ukrainians will be less equipped over time. It's going to be bad, okay? That said, I'm not guaranteeing that Republicans will strip funding for Ukraine. I know that that's a big divided issue in the Republicans right now. So I'm not sure, but I'm just saying it's probably not going to be good. Now, back to this letter, this so-called letter. The liberal Democrats in their letter say that more direct attempts at engaging Moscow in diplomacy were necessary as the war drags on. Quote, we are under no illusions regarding the difficulties involved in engaging Russia given its outrageous and illegal invasion of Ukraine and its decision to make additional illegal annexations of Ukrainian territory, the lawmakers wrote. However, if there is a way to end the war while preserving a free and independent Ukraine, it is America's responsibility to pursue every diplomatic avenue to support such a solution that is acceptable to the people of Ukraine. So, this letter is, I'm gonna give you my verdict, a nothing burger. This letter is worthless. It doesn't mean anything. This is just like, now a lot of people are speculating that AOC signed on to this letter because she got protested by like fascists. You know, again, timeline here. AOC does an event, right? And fascist, like literally, open, proud, Trump supporting, MAGA, like right wing in every regard, fascists, quote unquote, protest one of her town halls and talk about Ukraine or whatever, and they say that AOC is responsible for a nuclear war. Like, that's what they say. I'm not paraphrasing. Go watch the clip. So some people are saying that AOC is trying to appease those people. I disagree. I think that this letter literally means nothing. I'm going to go out there and say this. This letter is worthless and means nothing. Now, the headlines and the way that this story is going to be discussed is extremely important, but the letter itself and what is indicated in the letter is ultimately useless, right? Because again, both parts, one, they need to be more diplomatic with Russia or pursue, quote unquote, like all diplomatic relations or whatever. Okay. Everyone believes that. Everyone believes that. Okay. But then they say, we understand that Russia is a belligerent and they're a bad actor and they're the ones who probably aren't going to do anything. We understand that, but you should try anyway. Again, it effectively means nothing, right? The policy, they're not acted like they're literally not trying to change U.S. policy, because U.S. Diplomatic policy for Ukraine is exactly what they're describing that they want. They tried diplomatic efforts in February and January, failed. March, they tried, failed. They tried sanctions, failed, right? They tried all forms of diplomacy from every position, and it's failed. Why? Because Russia, headed by Vladimir Putin, is a belligerent and an offensive imperialistic invasion, right? And he does not want to give up. That's just it. So the letter is basically saying, you should do this thing, but if it doesn't work, it's okay, and we understand. The letter means nothing, right? The letter, they're not actively pushing the U.S. in any sort of policy change, right? They're just saying that they support the policy. It's virtue signaling, right? In the literal sense. This is like a literal example of virtue signaling. They're just signaling, hey, we want diplomacy, but we know it's probably not going to happen, but we want it anyway. That's all this is. Now, another thing that's interesting about this that I saw is Mark Pocan went on Twitter after this news story started going. And Mark Pocan says, in response to criticism, hear you first, this was written in July. And I have no idea why it went out now. Bad timing. Second, it was trying to get to a ceasefire and diplomacy as others were banging war drums, not criticizing Biden. Third, I've supported the efforts and will continue, overanalyzed by some. This is Mark Pocan, who's a part of this letter, who's claiming that this letter that's being talked about in the news was written in July. Now, is that possible? Yes. But what? If it was written in July, why would it be publicized now? It's an October surprise, right? But like, again, the letter is a nothing burger. So in order for this to be an October surprise, headlines need to dramatize it. They need to hyperbolize it. Like, again, liberal Democrats call on Biden to shift Ukraine strategy. That is disinformation. Now, again, just to be clear, this is not Fox News. This is CNN. Just to be clear, this is CNN. This is not true. The letter does not call on Biden to shift Ukraine strategy. It says that Biden should pursue all available diplomatic relationships possible to engage in a ceasefire, but also we know that he's doing that and that it's not working because Vladimir Putin is crazy. So it's just not what the letter says. I don't know what to tell you, right? That's just not true. Right? Like, this is a lie. Like, this is straight up disinformation. This is like OAN, Newsmax, or whatever. This is like just straight up fucking, this is lying, okay? But again, the letter, I also don't understand the point of the letter. right? It's virtue signaling, but like everyone already knows that they have these virtues anyway. So it's just like, it's weird. It's weird. But let's keep going with this thread here. Someone else on Twitter responds to Mark Pocan by saying, I don't think it was written in July eases my concerns. That letter is just as ill-considered and contradictory in July as it is now. I look forward to your strong support for Ukraine in the face of lawless invasion. We don't need any more Russian adventures in Europe. It never said anything about not having strong support for Ukraine. All of us have voted for funding and will continue. I think you are trying to sensationalize the letter. Show me where it says we should stop support for Ukraine. Didn't think so. So, again, now, we can go out here and say Mark Pocan is lying. The letter was written last week, and that they secretly do want to change Biden's policy here. But again, we can read the letter. And CNN literally posts the letter here. Now, again, I can understand how someone who doesn't really understand what's going on with Ukraine would read this letter and think, oh, the liberals, or, you know, I can understand that, right? But, like, again, this is where news propaganda is flourishing, right? It's a letter that it literally is just saying, hey, Biden, you should be more diplomatic, maybe, but I already know you are diplomatic, and I'm assuming that you're being as diplomatic as possible, but I love diplomacy, and I want the war to end, and I hate war, so I'm going to write a letter saying I don't like war, even though I know Russia is the belligerent and they're not responding. I'm just going to say I just want to write a letter that says I don't like war. That's essentially what this letter is. It's a letter. You know, AOC is involved, right? That's where I saw this from. It's a letter that basically says, we don't like war. That's it. That's it. It's not calling for a shift in policy. It's not criticizing Biden's policy agenda, or it's not criticizing Ukraine funding. It's not it's literally just a letter that it could have just been, we don't like war, signed 30 whatever. Like, that could have been the letter. It's the same fucking thing, right? But again, the world we live in now, right? Like, you could just lie about something, and then boom, you're CNN, one of the most trusted whatever sources in media, and you just lie about it. Fuck it. Whatever. Surprise, bitch! It's October. Now again, does the letter have any point? I would have preferred if they didn't write a letter. The letter has no point. There is no point to the letter. It's just virtue signaling what all of their constituents already know are their beliefs. So why even write the letter? It's weird. Why even sign on to the letter? It's fucking weird. I don't know. I can't answer those questions. But I can tell you that this letter was not written to appease like some guy who's like a fucking neo-Nazi who is protesting at AOC's event. I can tell you that, right? Unless these are time-traveling neo-Nazis that like went back in time to like secretly make AOC sign this letter like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, or whatever, right? And then like going forward in time and then release the, like, I don't know. Unless they're time-traveling neo-Nazis, whatever. But ultimately, I think the letter is useless. It doesn't really mean anything. And that goes for both ways, right? Like, I'm not going to criticize them for really writing the letter because there's really nothing to criticize in the letter. It's just like, this is a non-story. This is a nothing burger. Unless there's some magical detail that I have missed, this is an irrelevant story, and I guarantee you people are going to freak the fuck out about this for the next couple days. I guarantee you. And I guarantee you the Jimmy Dore squad, like the neo-Nazi fucking adjacent people that are showing up at this fucking goddamn neo-Nazi convention or whatever that were protesting at AOC's town hall, I guarantee you they're going to run with this, and they're going to have a great fundraising event. I guarantee you Jimmy Dore is going to have some fun-ass fundraising events based on this. I guarantee you this is going to help a lot of people in the disinformation grifting networks. But I'm not in those networks, and I read the letter, and it means nothing, so I'm just here to tell you it means nothing. So, there you go. Boom.